Welcome to Sports Tech HQ, a show where we explore the cutting edge of technology that is transforming the world of sports. I'm Jeff Hintz, and today I'm joined by Joel Shinofield, the Managing Director of Sport Development for USA Swimming. Joel, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All the way from Minnesota, right?
Originally from Minnesota. Yeah. I lived in Virginia for about 20 years and now in Colorado.
Okay, great. So we're taping this podcast 1 week into the U.S. Olympic team trials for swimming here in Indianapolis. It's been such an exciting, historic week. Lots of records broken, both in the pool and outside the pool. And can you just talk a little bit about kind of what this competition means for the athletes and for your organization as we head into Paris?
Absolutely. So this is really the critical competition for our athletes as they head into Paris. It's our selection process. There is no other way to qualify for the Olympic Games in the U.S. as a swimmer. You have to come to this meet. You have to get your hand on the wall first. We only take 52 athletes. That's our limit to take. That's set by the IOC and World Aquatics. So 26 men and 26 women, max number of athletes out of the 1,000 that are here that can make the Paris team.
Wow, and that's a little different from some of the other sports, right?
Yeah, there are different qualification methods, and certainly around the world too. So even in swimming, it may be different in different countries. They'll set different ways. They may have a more liberal selection policy where if an athlete is sick or injured, that they can add them to the team. For us, this is it. You have to be healthy and ready to go on the day that you compete, and that is your one chance. We do have an open water team as well, and that is selected off of international competition. So we have 3 athletes that were already named to the team before this event started, and they're not counted in the 26, although we do have Katie Grimes, who has qualified in both open water and in the pool.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's cool. Where are they swimming in Paris in the open water?
It is supposed to be in the Seine, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, it's one of those issues that we're facing across the world with water quality and access to clean water.
Sure.
And certainly right now, they're planning to make sure that they can avoid days where it rains and keep the water quality clear and healthy for the athletes to compete in there.
Okay, so speaking of water and where we're having this event here in Indianapolis and in a football stadium, I guess first talk a little bit about Indy and kind of obviously hosting events here in Indy is what we do really well.
Yeah.
We'll pat ourselves on the back on that one. But just talk about like what it's meant to bring the event back to Indy. Obviously, we were here early, 20 plus years ago, and you had a little bit of a hiatus out west and then back to Indy. So what has it been like this week for you?
Well, first of all, this city is built to host people. That's the first thing our coaches and athletes talk about is that it is walkable. It's easy to find restaurants. Yeah. It's just a city that is built to host big events and really to host people. And I think that's the greatest part. There are lots of event spaces. There are lots of stadiums, but the combination of the hosting ability to make people feel welcome in the city, to be able to walk around, go to restaurants, just have a much more relaxed experience is great for our athletes. They're not struggling with rental cars. They're not trying to figure out where to park. You can easily walk to the event, and you're right in the midst of it. It's an easy, Uber or taxi from the airport. So really simple. The other thing is this event becomes very sustainable because of the location. So the pool itself, the competition pool, will be packed up and sent to Fort Wayne. The 2 million gallons of water that are in the pool came right out of the White River. It was cleaned, purified. After the event, it'll go right back into the river after the chlorine is taken out and that water is cleaned and put back into the river. Yeah. So it's an incredibly sustainable event because of the location as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. So I've been in the stadium a few times for football and even basketball, but when you walk in there for the first time and you see a pool, it's just a different feeling. So you mentioned the 2 million gallons. Do you have any other stats? Like how long did it take to build the pool and how many people were on the construction? Any kind of fun facts that
Sure. I think, the funny thing is people are always like, how did you excavate, and that's like, well, first of all, I think the Colts would be really upset if we excavated into their nice concrete floor. So the pool's actually built on top of the concrete floor. There is 64,000 square feet of plywood used to create the deck that makes it look like we're at that we have excavated. Yeah. So if you think about that, that's, 4,000 sheets or 2,000 sheets of plywood that are used to create that deck. Yeah. Right. So that alone is a feat. The pool itself took about 2.5 weeks. We're actually we were under schedule, or we were faster. We predicted about 3 weeks. The team got it done really quickly. And part of that is the ease here compared to a smaller venue. So you can drive the trucks right in. You're not offloading to forklifts and having to move all the materials because these are steel panels. I think they're approximately 4 feet wide. They're 2.5 meters high, and they're all bolted together to create the framework. And it's a really high grade stainless steel product. And then there's a synthetic mesh that creates kind of the softer feel to the pool. And then there's a liner, which is what you look at when you're seeing it on TV. Sure. And it looks like it's tile. It looks like it's just this but it's actually just really 3 layers of materials that are bonded together.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And then taking it apart, obviously there's probably some kind of chemical process, and you've got to.
Yeah. It, actually, not much in the way of that. And first of all, the water gets removed, right? Sent back into the river after some cleaning. But really what happens is the hardest part, I think, is removing that top layer and doing that really carefully so that it can be preserved. And then you're basically just it's an erector set after that. You're just taking apart the bolts, and there are probably 1 million bolts and nut sets that are holding it together.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I got a tour yesterday actually on the floor and got to see the pumps and the size of the pumps. And
local technology company, Spear Technology, their filters, their pumps, really cool ultraviolet cleansing process. So we're using far less chlorine, far less chemicals. That's taking that's right now is probably one of the best filtration products around.
I got it. And is there, I heard maybe there's like a control rooms where they can constantly monitor what's going on in the pool too.
Absolutely.
High tech.
Yeah. And the 2 pools have completely separate filtration and pump systems.
Yeah. So you mentioned 2 pools. So a lot of us just see the competition pool, but behind the big black curtain is even a larger pool.
Yeah, it's enormous. So it's this part of it's an L shape. The primary part of the L is the same size as the competition pool, 10 lanes, 50 meters. And then you've got an additional pool that is 7 lanes, 25 meters, and that allows all 1,000 athletes to warm up and cool down after their races comfortably. And it's certainly the largest pool that we've ever built for trials, and I think it's probably the largest pool that's ever existed for an Olympic event.
Right. Yeah, and this is not new. You guys have built temporary pools before. In stadiums or in arenas or in convention centers.
Yeah, in 2004, we were in a parking lot in Long Beach.
Okay.
So just set it right down, built a pad for it, set it right down there. The meet was outdoor, temporary stands, temporary stadium, and then moved into Omaha in 2008. Like this event, not sold out the first time, but it grew and then eventually, sold out well before the event even started. And that's really the hope here is that we can do the same thing, build the momentum, build the interest, and build into an established process of people thinking about this every 4 years. We're going to be in a football stadium. Let's make this the great homecoming of swimming in the U.S.
Yeah, and then as managing director for sport development for USA Swimming, that focused in on kind of growing the sport. Obviously, is probably what you do day in and day out, and then you get to do these really cool things and work on these huge meets. But talk a little bit about for kind of the average fan that may not be a swimmer, the complexity of getting them, I guess, the average fan to kind of understand what the meet is all about and how it's structured. And I think that's a big part of it, as you build, for future years, especially as you did in Omaha, is you get kind of the lay fan or somebody that may not be in the water every morning, training, but they want to go to a really cool event. And I will say, having been several nights now, the production quality and the value to this, I talked with somebody here in Indiana that said they were at another showcase event that happened here in February. Pun intended, this thing blows it out of the water, and just because of the I think the emotion that you feel. I mean, there's a few times I'm watching and you see somebody make the Olympic team for the first time, and they start crying. And then it's like, it's getting dusty where we're in our seats because it's just you can see all the work and the effort and all the hours spent training comes to a head at that moment for that individual athlete. Now they're an Olympian. So you spend time on growing the sport. And so how important is this event, which is I think probably the marquee event that you all have here as USA Swimming, to help bolster growth for the future of the sport?
Yeah, I'd love to take credit for that production value, but that is definitely the domain of Shana Ferguson, our chief commercial officer. She's a fantastic human being. She swam at the Naval Academy. She was a Marine, Corps captain.
Wow.
Worked at Under Armour for years. But I think for her, this is really deeply personal because she was a swimmer and she wants to make sure the swimmers feel great in the venue and they get an amazing experience just like any other top-level elite athlete. And so there was a high focus on that production value from her perspective. From a competition value, that's really our national team. So our managing director is Lindsay Mintenko, who's an Indiana, native and Olympian, formerly Lindsay Benko when she was winning those medals. She was, Olympic captain, fantastic human being. She runs that side. But for me, as you said, I'm really interested in how this grows the sport. I've gotten to watch the guys who are making the team and the women who are making the team since they were little kids. And last night seeing Shane and Carson, Shane Cassis and Carson Foster make the team.
Was a cool moment.
Carson's made it earlier in the week, but both those guys have missed out on Olympic teams in their career, as they've been growing up, and you've watched them just miss, finish third. And now to see them both make the team together, you can just see the relief and the excitement, but it was just, as you said, really emotional. But for me, I want people to see those stories and see that, hey, there are people who have fallen down and gotten back up, because the benefit of sport, everybody works hard in every sport. So I really have a hard time. People say, well, our sport is better because we work hard. Well, every good athlete works hard.
Right.
I think what's really neat in swimming is that you have these individual goals in a team environment. And you saw that last night. Those guys both swim, at Texas. They're both working together every day to get better. But at the end of the day, they were competing against each other to make the team, and they happened to beat the other folks in the pool. So they both made it. But it's a unique environment where you see that support even when an athlete doesn't make it. You see the support for their teammate, which I think is fairly unique in that there are these really lofty individual goals, but in a team environment. And I've watched those guys work in practice, and and seen people do it all across the country. For me, my role as in sport development is kind of multifold, because I oversee our data and software, as well as coach and athlete development. Sure. And our Safe Sport program, which is our athlete abuse prevention program. I work on our DEI and community engagement and how we bring people into the sport. Mm-hmm. And bottom line, we want to give as many people an opportunity to experience swimming as possible, because swimming may be the thing that changes your life. Whether that's art, whether that's being in a play, whether that's music, whether that's football. Everybody can't do everything, and they're going to find what they're good at, what they love, and where they find their friendships and meaningful experience with coaches. And we want swimming to be really available to just about anybody in the country. So have one of our clubs in every community, really high quality coaching, just great experiences for families. And this brings attention to those 2,700 clubs we have around the country that provide those experiences, and all those local coaches, our 18,000 coaches, our 15,000 officials that make these meets possible. I mean, you see the
15,000 officials.
Yeah, just to make, because we sanction through our kind of state-based associations about 5,800 meets a year for kids to participate in.
Wow.
And that's all done at the local level. And then we do about 20 to 30 a year that are in our program, which starts at our Speedo sectional meets and our zone championship meets all the way up to an Olympic trials.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of people involved with, putting on all these competitions. The moment last night that we saw the two gentlemen advance to Paris, Michael Phelps put their medals on them, which that was just an added, just wow. It was such a cool moment for those athletes to, I'm sure they know him and everything, but, to have that done right there on that stage. Really cool stage, by the way.
Yeah.
Shayna, congrats to Shayna and crew, but the stage actually comes down from underneath the pool deck and raises up, and it's just, you get all the feels.
Another Indiana company, Dodd, is they've put that together, that rising platform that brings the from down below in the pool, which is fantastic. And to have Michael put your medals on is pretty great for those guys. Those guys were 10, 11, 12 years old when Michael was in Rio in 2016, and so for them to see that is really fun, and get to experience that with him is fantastic.
Yeah. So let's shift a little bit to innovation. So this week we held an innovation summit, USA Swimming Innovation Summit, powered by Sports Tech HQ. And this was the first time that you all have done anything like that. I know we talked about it a year plus ago to pull something together, because we have this really neat crowd that comes in to these events, and let's pull them together for a networking event. And that's what we did on Tuesday, and featured some of the companies that you may be working with in the swimming. Let maybe talk a little bit about why is that important to have to you when you think about like innovation around swimming, to have kind of that moment where you get that group in the room, but then also maybe some of the companies that you're working with at USA Swimming that make the sport or make your life or make sport development more efficient.
Yeah, well, this event is quite honestly great for a lot of reasons. One is it gives these athletes a high profile event. Two, it creates an amazing, PR opportunity for our sport, but also it creates these unique collaborations. So getting a chance to work with you and your team at SportsTech HQ to put on this event and connect with people who normally would not be in the swimming space is fantastic. Getting them to think about how their technology, which may be adjacent to sport or adjacent to swimming, can actually be productive and helpful for our athletes. So that in itself was great to get people talking about, oh, wow, I think we can see ourselves in your sport. We can see ourselves making a difference with your athletes, with your teams. For me, I'm looking for technology that can help our grassroots better the experience, create better performance, help our coaches get more athletes to reach their potential, and then get to events like this. And then how can we help those athletes at that elite level have an edge on the competitors around the world? Like I want to beat the Australians, I want to beat the French, I want to beat everybody. And so if we can get companies to think about that entire vertical, how do we create a better experience for families and kids? How do we create, efficiencies for coaches so they can deliver better experiences? How can we create better performance at the grassroots level? And then how do we take those better performances and turn them into elite performance at the top of the world and win in a sport that is governed by fractions of a second? You've seen the ties this week and how, it comes down to the fingernail. So any little edge that we can gain with technology in a way that is positive and helps the athletes improve their performance is fantastic. So having some of those companies here that were, Oslo as an example, better sleep. Our athletes are going to travel. They're going to go home. They're going to travel then to a domestic training camp. Then they're going to travel to a European training camp. This is a lot of flight time and different time zones. So if we've got a device that helps our athletes get to sleep faster and get better sleep, that directly could influence, right? That's not a swimming technology, but that's an athlete technology. Sure, it's a human technology that helps you perform better. So just that conversation alone is interesting. But for us, we had sort of a Shark Tank moment in the event with a young company that I think. What I think about Swim Warrior, who was there, is they're doing things to make the family experience better. They're doing things to help coaches make that grassroots experience to keep kids, because the easiest way to grow the sport is to retain the kids who try it. So if we can keep swimming fun, if we can gamify it, if we can get more technology in the sport so kids interact with it, even when they leave the pool, that's great. But I also love swimming because there are no screens in the pool. And so you can get kids away from those screens for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours a day, so that they're away from those things. But that allows kids to stay connected and be really positive about their swimming experience and their improvements. So that's just one example. Mm-hmm. We've got a company, SwimCloud, here this week that is helping us with our video review,
really cool,
which has been tremendous. So every one of the athletes that competes, they are videoed. And then after their race, after they cool down, they can come over with their coach and they can get detailed video analysis of their race so that they can think about how to improve either for a semifinal race if they've made it to that, or what they're going to do for the rest of their summer, how they can get better by the end of the summer, or what they can do starting in the fall to improve as well. So having that instant video analysis with their team and with our sport development team, our team services group, working in collaboration, is really fantastic because it gives the athletes direct feedback and some metrics about their performance that they can integrate into their training, and the coaches can start to see deficits and areas of success that they can then balance their training out. So that's right on the deck.
That's immediately after the race.
Yeah, they walk right down the screens. Everything it's available on their phone, on their tablet, on their computer, but then also we've got screens down there, and then we show them how to use it so they can walk away. They don't have to sit there. After they've gone through the analysis, they can actually take it with them. They've got that video, and they can continue to look at it when they get back to their hotel room. So really great technology. They also do meet management tools. They have a recruiting software as well. So they do quite a bit in our space. It's one of the really kind of few technologies that is just swimming only. They're not really in any other space.
Yeah. I was chatting with one of the founders, and I just was fast. It's almost like, NFL, they come to the sideline immediately. They can look at the plays and how the defense set up, or they can look at what they did. And
it's Tom Brady chucking a tablet.
That's what yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, exactly. But down to the stroke mechanics and the biomechanics with the stroke, and maybe being able to make an adjustment for if they made it through to the semis to make it for finals. So just right there on the spot. So the tech in swimming is there, and admittedly, I didn't see that, before. You see the swimmers get in the water and they swim, but immediately they get instant feedback. So
really and the World Aquatics and the IOC are now allowing technology to be worn during the events, which just started a year ago.
Okay.
So that's never been allowed before. And in the Innovation Summit the other day, talking to two local companies.
Yes.
One, actually, a person who runs the technology aspects at Purdue, but then also a local company that has got a sensor that would fit in a swim cap. They're thinking about under their watch.
Ganance.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
to make any watch a smartwatch.
Yes.
But I'm thinking that makes any swim a smart swim, because we can
Hey.
put that in their cap. They can then transfer it to their watch when they leave the pool, because swimmers don't want anything on there. It just reduces your efficiency if it's
Sure.
on your wrist. But
Yeah.
put it in the cap. Now I can get biofeedback, get some telemetry, just get velocity and know the velocity at any given point in time in the race. There's some really cool things that, like I said, it's not swimming technology. It's definitely adjacent, but it can be purposed for that if we all get in the room. And that's what I really appreciate about this event, is being able to collaborate with you, with the USOPC, with Mike Proman and and Conrad. It was just great to get those people in the room, because if you don't ever do that, you never find out that exists.
Right.
And that's what we need. We need more of that. So
Yeah.
I would love to continue that, even when we're back here for other events like our nationals, our world championship selections, things like that. And continue that conversation about how we think about using the technology that exists or people are working on in a different way.
Yeah. It's amazing what happens when you get a group of people like that in the same room at the same time, and what the conversations that you can have. So you mentioned Mike and Conrad, both in the VC world, and so to have some VCs, they were on the panel to talk about investment in sport, and that's on the rise. And so it was great to have kind of the VC community in the room too. So let's shift a little bit. I just want to talk about you as a coach. You spent a good number of years as a coach at Washington and Lee University, and then flipped over to the Coaches Association. So fair amount of time as a coach and really being an advocate for coaching. And can you talk a little bit about do you miss that? Do you miss being a coach?
I do.
That? Yeah.
Yeah. I coached for 20 years. So, I started coaching in the club space. I had a club team in Minnesota for about 10 years, coached high school during a big part of that time as well.
Okay.
Shifted over. I was also working in downtown Minneapolis, working on kind of a unique consulting with Minneapolis Fortune 500 companies around long-term workforce development, looking at ways they could partner with local schools. It was very innovative at the time, because we were using email in the early 90s to do mentoring with kids in the different schools, but also working with companies like General Mills, who would do after-school programs to encourage kids to participate in science. Because if you're a local employer, you need local employees, and you need people who are qualified. So how do you inspire kids to stay in school? How do you inspire kids to pursue STEM fields? So that was what we worked on primarily. I left that to coach at the University of Minnesota for about 4 years.
Okay.
And that was a great experience. Got a chance to spend some time here at Big Ten championships and things, but and then got a chance to go back to my alma mater to coach there. And that was great, because I got to marry the idea of how you could perform at a high level academically and athletically, which is really what I believe swimming allows you to do. In fact, today I'm going to get to give a tour to an athlete I coached. Came in, he was kind of he was an all around athlete, not a great swimmer at the time. Ended up being a multi-time All-American, but even better, he went to Harvard Medical School after he graduated. He then went to Pittsburgh Medical Center for his residency, one of the top orthopedic sports medicine programs in the world, and now. He's a professor and doctor at the University of Michigan. I'm gonna get a chance to take he and his family around. Cool. And now his kids are swimmers too.
That's awesome.
So, and that's the kind of stuff that I love. Wow. We had I think 3/4 of our All-Americans ended up going to medical school. It was just really fun to marry the idea of you can perform at a high level at both. So that's what I love about coaching, is helping athletes understand that there's more to it than swimming, and to use swimming as a vehicle to improve other areas of your life. Went back to high school coaching for a couple of years, and when my wife was an athletic director.
Okay.
I'll never stop coaching. I'll find ways to get on.
It's rewarding, isn't it?
It is. I love it.
Yeah. How you can impact lives, and it's an amazing. Everybody should have to be a coach at some point in their life, just to go through how you teach, and
I think so.
And the life lessons you learn in any sport, really.
Yeah.
I think about swimming, the dedication that these athletes have, and I think maybe you've swam in the pool here, maybe once or twice at 6 a.m. with maybe some of your coworkers, and that happens every morning. Swimmers seem like they're swimmers for life. Yeah, and that regimented training, or maybe it's just at some point in your life it becomes a workout. But to be in the pool at 6 a.m. means you're up at 5 a.m. And so, there's a lot of discipline that comes with that, which then can parlay into other things in life.
Yeah, it's interesting. We have to actually fight that a little bit when families first start with the sport because they think that's what they're going to have to do is 10 practices a week at 6 a.m. And really, those novice kids come in and they do 45-minute sessions, and those are usually at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
So we have to fight that a little bit to get people in the door. But certainly, I think that's another discipline area that you get from swimming is I'm going to do this every day. I'm going to find a way to work out every day to stay in shape and keep myself healthy. We've got well over 1,000 athletes with our partners, U.S. Masters swimming over at the Natatorium,
right.
and they're having their national championship this week as well, so that their athletes can come over here and watch the meet at night.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So a little bit on the tech. So when did you first feel like tech was coming onto the scene for swimming? What was that moment? If you're a coach, or
when I was a young club coach, I started looking for ways to be more efficient with how I would help my athletes, and so looking at software in the mid '90s. Tropical Penguin was actually they built a coaching software that helps you keep track of workouts and helped you understand what the balance of the different types of physiology we're hitting in workouts, so you could track that. But so even back then, and at that time, I'm using a Mac Performa 550, which my phone probably has 10 times the power that
Sure.
did. But I think I've always wanted to figure out a way to marry technology to coaching because I just believe that there's an efficiency to be created. We're coaching in a senior group of athletes. That 15 to 20 year old athlete. We have 30 athletes in the pool with maybe an assistant coach.
Sure.
You want to make sure you're providing really good feedback and you're tracking those athletes, and that's really difficult to do without some kind of assistance.
Yep.
So we're looking at whether or not we're using our touchpads and timing system to use test sets where we're tracking an athlete's progress week to week and having them do the same set every week or every 2 weeks, getting up off the blocks and racing in practice, things like that, so we can keep track of whether or not they're improving. But honestly, with all of the wearables that are now available, it's trying to figure out how to manage the data. There's almost so much data coming at athletes and coaches at this point that they don't know what to do with it. And also you lose some of the human aspects of, okay, well, that's great. It says that your HRV is this. It says that your resting heart rate is this. But what does that actually mean, and how do you feel? So you have to connect those two things.
Okay.
Not only what you see from the metrics on the athlete,
Sure,
but also their people.
So do you see that as an opportunity in the space? All the data coming in for a company to help aggregate that, so the coaches and the athletes can really understand that better.
I do. We had a Finnish company that was in the audience, Sprint AI, and what they do is they actually create a dashboard, and they use their AI technology, and they have a ton of physiologists and biomechanists on their team. In addition to really good coders, they can create a visual for the athlete and the coach that is much more discernible to a coach or an athlete about what's actually going on. It's not just 1,000 data points. It's the 3 to 7 that you've selected. And then that allows you to have a conversation with the other human being. Because I think one of the things we forget about in sport is when we start identifying a person as their sport, like, hey, this is my swimmer. No, this is your son, David, who happens to swim. You don't want to lose that, because that personal connection between coach and athlete should never be supplanted by technology, only supported by technology.
Sure. Okay, this will be a quick one. The tech suit, good or bad for swimming?
So I would say net good, because it taught us we could be a lot better. So what it did was it was a shortcut. It probably went too far. It took the athlete out of the equation to some degree.
Okay.
But it also showed us if we changed body position in our stroke mechanics. It also showed us if we trained a little bit differently. It completely changed the way that we thought about body position in the water, because that suit floated the athlete. And by floating the athlete up, quite honestly, there's a lot less drag. It also compressed the body mass as well and created that. That's how it created the flotation. And quite honestly, it just taught us how to be better coaches. And it made us realize that times were possible. Almost all of those times from the suited era, which we thought would never be broken.
The suited era.
The suited era, yeah. The suited era from the 2008 to 2009.
Wow.
Almost all of those records have now been broken,
I see.
which nobody thought would happen. Like, oh my gosh, nobody's going to touch these. There are a few that are left, but we've learned from that. So it was a great advancement. And now coaches still use those suits, but they use them in practice. So they let an athlete feel what it's like to be going at their top level speed when they're tired, and they can get a feel for that, and it helps them in the training. So it was tough then, because the main issue was that people didn't have universal access. The biggest problem, the biggest reason there was pushback is that there wasn't enough. There was a, we talk about supply chain problems now. There was a supply chain problem. So some athletes got these really, really elite, expensive buoyant suits, and some athletes didn't have access to them, or they had access to a lower quality, even at the national team level.
Yeah.
And so we created this disparity. So we had to just do what every other sport has done and said, hey, there's a certain distance a golf ball can travel. There's a certain distance that a ball can leave a baseball bat, or velocity can leave a baseball bat at. And we had to do the same thing. And so, actually, there's a doctor here at Purdue who you know well, who helped kind of, what is the standard? What are the things that we need to stay away from so that everybody has essentially the same. And the materials are going to be a little bit different. All the suit companies are going to go find their, their tiny little margins, push the edge. But there are some rules about the way that the seams have to be woven versus taped. Wow. There are a lot of different rules around it to make sure that there is, some restriction on what the suit does for you versus the work that you've put in as an athlete.
Yeah. All right. So net positive.
I think net positive. Good. I think it brought some interesting attention. Yeah. People still talk about it, even people who are not swimmers. So it's interesting. Yeah. But it certainly was, it was chaos. Yeah.
That's Joel Shinofield, the Managing Director of Sport Development for USA Swimming. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into this episode of Sports Tech HQ. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. And remember, stay tuned for our next episode, where we will explore another exciting innovation in the world of sports tech.